the hardest thing in doing these things is getting to the start line for a lot of people. And so she just sort of said this group is about looking at what are the things that are getting in the way, what are the barriers that are stopping you, and we're going to like talk it through and we'll work it out together.
So I didn't have any mud at all for the first 300k. It was like hilly but not muddy, raining but not muddy yet. And then it was actually quite funny because the first 300k were like very hilly, and then the last 200k were very flat. And I had no idea about this mud thing. Like I had never heard it before. And so I was just 100% convinced that once I had done this like very hilly 300k, then it would just be like super fast and super flat. It was like just so naive to think that.
Look, I will fully admit that particular moment in that thunderstorm on farm roads that were flooding around us with hail pelting our heads, that was a little bit scary.
Welcome to the Seek Travel Ride podcast, where we share the stories and experiences of people who have undertaken amazing adventures by bike. Whether it's crossing state borders, mountain ranges, countries or continents, we want to share that spirit of adventuring on two wheels with our listeners. Hello, my name is Bella Malloy and I'm excited to introduce my guests for today's episode of Seek Travel Ride, Berenice, Rosie and Tam. Three women who make a part of the group dubbed the Mallee Fledglings. In a bid to get more people to the start line of ultra events, the Mallee Fledglings group was formed. It would be a way for those who wanted to get more involved in this side of the sport to collectively train together and get exposed to some key skills prior to testing all out for real in the event itself. Now, that chosen event was the Mallee Blast, a bikepacking event held in regional Victoria, Australia, connecting the two towns of Torquay and Swan Hill. Two distances exist for the event, 500 kilometres and 1,000 kilometres, and the route was specifically designed as a way to give beginners a taste for what these events are like to participate in. Now, the 2023 edition of the Mallee Blast happened just a few weeks ago, and it's fair to say Mother Nature turned up and had a bit of a say in the outcome as well. Huge storms and rain wreaking havoc on the Australian dirt roads. I watched this all play out from the safety of my living room through various Instagram stories, and the whole while was quite enthralled to witness the determination of these fledglings who were out there in the midst of it all, trying to make it all make sense. And now, with a sufficient amount of time to have passed to ensure this story gets told with the benefit of some beautifully rose-tinted glasses, I get to put my questions to this group and find out more about what it was like to go from Mallee fledgling to ultra participant. Berenice, Rosie and Tam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Hello.
I am super excited to speak with you all today. As I said in the intro, it's been a few weeks since the Mallee Blast, but I feel anyone who participated in that 2023 edition, it's imprinted in your memory. I'm pretty sure that there's some experiences you've had there that will never be burned away from it at all. I'm really, really looking forward to getting into the details of that. But as listeners of the podcast would know, a question which I start the show with, and I ask this of all my guests, is, do you remember the very first bike you ever rode? Now, there's three of you here, and I'm going to mix up the order. It's funny, the benefit of my listeners, I get to watch three faces thinking. But I'm going to throw it out to you first, Berenice. Berenice, do you remember the first bike you ever rode? Tell me about that story.
I don't think I do remember. I know it had like small wheels, but I can't say I remember it very well.
Oh, do you remember like riding a bike though? Like, do you remember that feeling, not the bike itself, but maybe the feeling of your first bike ride?
Yeah, I remember trying to ride bikes, trying to keep up with my brothers, I remember as a child trying motorcycle as well. You know, the bike with one wheel only.
Oh my gosh, a unicycle. Wow.
Yeah.
How old were you when you were doing that?
Maybe 9, 10.
Oh, awesome. Could you imagine unicycling the Mallee Blast?
Oh my God.
Maybe there's less mud to get stuck on a unicycle.
That's
not
right.
sure.
Yeah, you don't have a derailleur to, yeah.
Oh my God, better clearance.
Yeah, less mechanic for it get bogged up.
Exactly. In fact, I have interviewed a unicyclist, German unicyclist Rebecca Wiedner. She rode her unicycle 8,500 kilometres on the off-road European Divide Trail, which, just saying that out loud again, blows my mind. If I recall correctly, Berenice, she was about the same age when she started unicycling as well. So maybe that's
Right.
something you can pick back up. There's a new goal for you. Okay, what about you, Tam? What's your first bike memory?
Well, mine's actually a little bit funny because it's a very strong memory. I grew up in a little rural town and we sort of had a cul-de-sac that connected to another court. And I loved my little plastic, sit on and scoot tricycle. My mum really wanted me to ride a bike. So, the big thing when I was a kid was, going to the other court. And one day she got, I think I was 5 and she was like, no, you need to ride your bike. And she banned me from going to the other court unless I rode my bike, unless I got off this little plastic trike. So I rode my bike. And I remember pouting and grumping and obviously eventually caving and getting on my bike and riding that way. And I remember telling my mother this story very recently. Oh, well, actually, no, about 2 years ago. And she said, oh my goodness, I don't remember saying that. And I'm really sorry. I said, Mum, what is my chosen sport now? Actually, the knock-on effects of that were very positive.
Tam, when I was looking into some of the stuff that you have done prior to the Mallee Blast, I mean, you may be new to ultra cycling events, but you're certainly not new to the sport of cycling. You have done some amazing things. I think, road cycling, track cycling, cyclocross, gravel, like unicycling is something you could join maybe.
You'd try, actually. My friend found a unicycle in Hard Rubbish and gave it to me, and I tried, and I just kind of forgotten it existed, but now I'm thinking about it again.
Rebecca, if you're listening to the show, you can be so proud. There's 2 more unicycles about to start up again in Australia. Rosie, what about you? What's your first memory? What's your first bike memory there?
I definitely remember having a little sparkly green tricycle when I was really little. I don't remember much else about it, just that it was sparkly. And then I guess I don't really see that as a real bike. Once I got a little bit older, my brother and I shared a BMX with like Spokey Dokes, and I was part of his, I hung out with his friends a lot, and we were in a gang called the BMX Bandits. Yeah, that was epic. 1980s, small town New Zealand. So yeah, but I also remember my first, I guess, like my own proper bike I got for Christmas. Maybe I was like 13 or something, maybe 12 or 13, maybe younger, I can't remember. But it was an Avanti, and I remember on Christmas Day, like just going in and out of the house, like constantly to ride it up the driveway and then up the street and back. And then I don't know how many times I did that first day. I was obsessed with it.
Everyone who rode a bike as a kid must have memories of cutting laps just in their street, right?
Yeah.
Rosie, you were talking there, it was an Avanti bike that you got given. That's a Kiwi brand, I'm pretty sure. And you're a Kiwi, right?
Yeah, I am.
Where in New Zealand did you grow up?
Grew up in Hawke's Bay. Yeah, so that's the east coast of the North Island, smallish town. Yeah.
I often wonder, is this just a bias of mine that I perceive this, but I haven't met a Kiwi yet who hasn't been into the outdoors. I just feel you come from a country of outdoor enthusiasts, and that seems to be very much the case for yourself as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure they do exist, Kiwis who aren't, but yeah, I'm definitely one of those who's, I was brought up in the outdoors, so yeah, it's something I definitely, I love, yeah.
Family holidays in the outdoors to then sort of finding yourself yearning for outdoor adventures of different types as an adult as well. That's definitely been a feature of your life too.
Yeah, well, I just remember like most weekends we were taken out into the hills or the mountain ranges. Yeah, my brother and I just remember thinking, why do we have to do this? Like, none of my friends are doing this. Like, why do we have to go on these walks every weekend? And I used to kind of hate it up until a point, and then I still have this like quite vivid memory of one day that changed. Like, we were walking up quite a steep hill, and I got like satisfaction from it. I was like, this is actually like, I really remember that, like the flip. I was like, this is hard, but I like it.
I think that's something that translates with a lot of things that we do as adults as well. Like, we'll specifically call it out here in the adventure space. And obviously from, tonight's show, we're talking about bikepacking and ultra racing. There's so much stuff that's hard in that type of space. Doing hard things, reflecting back on doing hard things is a sense of pride we can take from that as well, isn't it? It's the ultimate in type 2. It's maybe not fun in the moment, but amazing reflecting back, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I feel we're sort of like a little bit of an international band here. Berenice, if my listeners picked up correctly, you have a beautiful French accent. I'd love to hit you up for some lessons, but whereabouts in France did you come from? Where were you raised?
I grew up in the Loire Valley, but I have always spent a lot of time in the Alps as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. I live in the Pyrenees, but I'm not one of those people that thinks one has to be better than the other. They're both amazing landscapes. Maybe you think the Alps are better.
No, I love the Pyrenees as well. Yeah.
You spent a lot of time in the Alps. Was that on family holidays or through adult life? Like, how did you end up there?
My dad was a lot into skiing, so we used to do a lot of skiing and competitive skiing there in winter.
Oh, wow. What a playground. I must admit, being in the Pyrenees with wintertime and being so close to so many ski resorts, I look at all these people who are so very able on two skis or, have so much ability on a snowboard. And I just think, I wish that was my lifestyle growing up. It definitely wasn't in Australia. And I'm sufficiently of the age now where I think I know what's likely to happen to my knees if I try it. So, but I do what's called raquette, which is snowshoeing. Did you do any snowshoeing or anything like that, or would you just stick to skis?
Yeah, I did a bit of snowshoeing once I was a bit older, and once I started enjoying hiking and more slower sports. But yeah, I did a bit of snowshoeing as well. Very fun. You can go everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. And when you first moved to Australia, that was up to Queensland, wasn't it?
Yeah, so not the same weather.
Definitely not. The land of heat and humidity and beautiful one day, perfect the next.
I never got used to it.
Yeah, okay. And Tam, what about you? How did adventure feature with you growing up? Were you in an active outdoors family? Did you find activity later in life? Tell me about that side of things.
Probably a combination of both. Well, we definitely were an active outdoorsy family, but sort of not 100% of the time. A lot of our family holidays were camping, which was, wonderful. We'd go different places and sort of, when I was very young, every New Year was spent camping for a week by the Ovens River and running around in paddocks.
Ovens River, I'm thinking Bright, Myrtleford.
Yeah, we were actually in Wangaratta. So when we had the opportunity, we would be outdoors and bushwalks. And I think sometimes I had the same sort of experience as Rosie when I was young, being like, oh, why are we doing this? But you always, clambering over the rocks. I loved doing that and finding rocks and sticks and making them your treasures for the day. And otherwise, like day to day, I actually grew up doing gymnastics. Never particularly getting good. My sister got very good. I enjoyed the trampolines and the rope climbing and the games, and I was quite happy just staying where I was and having fun.
I don't know how much gymnastics physically you need to do in a bikepacking event, but to me, there's so much mental gymnastics that goes on in our
entire
minds.
Mallee Blast.
A lot of that, definitely.
All in agreement here, right? We've all had those experiences, those WTF moments of how tired am I and where am I eating? I've only got sweet food and I want salty food.
Yeah. So to answer the second part, I think the cycling definitely came sort of late teenage years for me, and then I dropped off at one point when I went to uni because I moved to Melbourne. I didn't quite know how to ride in the city. When you're 18 and you've moved and you're navigating uni, you don't invest the time in figuring that out. Once all that sort of cleared, I found it again.
It would be remiss to do a podcast episode with you in it, Tam, without talking about something that's pretty significant for you. You are a dual kidney transplant. I don't say survivor. What do I say? Dual kidney transplant recipient.
Yeah, so actually that's sort of what brought me back to the bike again in my teenage years. Was I got really sick from 10 years old. I had to quit gymnastics because every time I pointed my toes, my legs would cramp. It came on quite rapidly and I lost muscle mass so quickly between the ages of 10 and 12. Was transplanted, I think, when I was 14, or maybe just before I turned 14. But I still, I had deconditioned so badly that even the physiotherapist sort of said, you have no calf muscles. Walking was hard. So yeah, I got on the bike because it was low impact and I could start small. And yeah, this was me on my little 10-year-old mountain bike thing and just starting to pedal around. It was the most comfortable thing to do, and it got me my strength back.
So it was really part of your recovery there. My mind is just blown at the idea of a 14-year-old dealing with that sort of scenario. Because I guess having a transplant, does that mean leading up to it you were in kidney failure?
Yes.
And I'm sorry if I'm using the wrong terminology. Even dialysis I don't really know that much about. I mean, I imagine you spent a fair amount of time on that waiting for a transplant?
Yeah, I did. So when I was young, I spent about 18 months on dialysis, first hemodialysis, which for anyone who doesn't know, is through the blood. And then secondly, on peritoneal dialysis, which is through the stomach. And yes, I spent about 18 months on dialysis while they tried to figure out how basically to transplant me. So I was on the waiting list, but they were also looking at live donors. But because my disease was not an immune disease, they had to be really picky. My first donor was actually my mum. And for a while, they didn't want to take her because they were worried that any transplant that was so closely related would just get attacked again by the autoimmune disease. We got to the point where we didn't have that much of a choice. So that's what we went with. And it lasted it functioned for a good 13 years. And then it was with me it's still with me actually, but yeah, it was my only kidney for 15.
Your latest kidney, I do love this. It's got a name. It's called Dopey. Tell me about the origins of the name.
Yes. Well, so Dopey does an absolutely wonderful job now. But when Dopey was first transplanted, it took just a little while to kick in. So it did actually take 24 hours to even start working. So I still needed a session of dialysis. And this is not uncommon. It got something called sleepy kidney syndrome, which basically means the transplant takes a little while to wake up. And this one was from a deceased donor. So that can happen. And then just as it settled, it still took a little while to really wake up. So my affectionate sort of self-talk in that very early transplant phase was, it's just a little bit dopey to wake up. It's just a little bit dopey to wake up. And Dopey stuck.
I've got this image of like a kidney in my mind with like the hat, the purple hat of Dopey from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs on it.
Yep, that's what I was picturing too, honestly.
I have so many questions around this. And I don't want this show just to be about kidney transplant and living with this in your life. But did you, like from a 14-year-old dealing with this and cognizant of the fact you use cycling as a way of regaining some muscle mass and getting active again, but did you actually see yourself being able to participate in life fully in this way? Because a 14-year-old, what sort of thoughts are going in through your mind there?
To be honest, and I'm not sure if this is everyone's experience, I think in some ways, childhood, you get the optimism lens. I didn't have much doubt. I always, for some reason, I just always assumed that there was an end to the bad parts. I don't think I even actively thought about the mindset I had, but it was always there for me. There was always going to be a time when the good parts would come around again. And I'm lucky in that rang true.
Have you found that optimism and the journey you've had from that, has that self-talk that you talk about, that positive spin you put on things, do you see yourself putting that spin on other things? Do you find you're someone who seems to have that positive mindset? You're not scared about something, you're excited about something. Like, do you see things in that way?
I'd like to say eventually yes, but like at the same time, I do have a lot of anxiety. So it becomes very active self-talk. You can't quite help it sometimes when you have a lot of health insecurity. So the worries are definitely there, but the tools and the mental tools and the mechanisms and that positive self-talk is what usually gets me back around.
It's such a spin out to think of where you've come here, because when I talked about the stuff that you've done before, like, with cycling, it wasn't just building up calf muscles again. And sorry, I don't want this to sound like a really ignorant question, but what are your calf muscles like now? Like, did you get your muscle mass back?
Yeah, I absolutely got my muscle mass back. You can see them visibly, whereas they basically weren't there. Obviously they had to be there, but they weren't doing anything. I couldn't even get on my toes. Like, I had just no strength. But yep, now I can walk and I can ride, and I don't know too much different.
Berenice, how did you get into cycling then? Like, you came to Australia, Queensland, such a different climate for you, but cycling, how did you fall into that?
I think I was not actually a cyclist back when I was in France. I started cycling when I moved to Australia because I joined the university triathlon club. So that's how I started to borrow a bike and try it and ride around the river. That's what we do in Brisbane.
Can I ask, joining the tri club there at uni, was your first sport more running then?
I had done a bit of running, yes. I had done a bit of adventure racing in France. So with a bit of trail running and mountain biking and kayaking, orienteering and whatever. But I had never done any road cycling. So that was my first time trying a road bike, was arriving in Brisbane.
Actually, I have to say, Berenice, if ever I think there was a sport that could prepare you a little bit better for ultra racing and bikepacking, I feel like adventure racing is one of them, because that's one where you have to problem solve a lot as well. The mental gymnastics is there. A lot of these events, and I don't know the events that you participated in, but adventure sports, sometimes they go over quite a long time frame as well, don't they? Like
several days, yeah.
Do you ever think of doing that side of things again, or do you? Like, are you still active in that sort of scene?
I mean, it was really fun. I really enjoyed doing that. I think when I arrived in Brisbane, there was just not as much as there was in France, and it was a bit hard as a student without a car and everything to get to that kind of event. So it didn't really do any in Brisbane. But yeah, I would enjoy doing some more in the future.
Oh, awesome. Oh, maybe some of your fledgling buddies, either on this podcast or in the broader fledgling community, maybe they'll be future teamies.
Could happen.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, possibility.
I'm looking. No commitment necessary right now, Tam and Rosie.
Yeah, sufficiently vague.
Okay, so 3 of you from pretty different backgrounds, but there is one common theme here. All 3 of you seem to love your time spent being active in the outdoors now. That's pretty clear. I want to know how you started getting into the sport of bike packing more specifically before this whole ultra thing came up, because in my mind, often what happens when people are interested in this sport is, you get into something. Bike packing feels like it's more of a social type of cycling activity as well. It sort of mixes cycling with a bit of adventure and maybe a bit of a holiday or, mini adventures and stuff like that. But how did each of you start discovering that? Rosie, how did you get into this side of the sport?
Well, I guess I got into cycling at the same time as getting into, like touring and bike packing. I didn't really, I mean, I rode to school as a kid every day, but but I hadn't ridden a bike really since then. So it was like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. My friend suggested we go just on on the Great Victorian Rail Trail over Christmas. And she just promptly went out and bought a bike. And I was like, oh, she's got a bike. I don't have a bike. This is a problem. But then another friend of mine just happened to be selling their Soma Wolverine. And I'd seen this bike and I was drooling over it from day one. And she just happened to be selling it at precisely the right time. And she let me pay it off as well. I didn't have a whole chunk of money. It's just this really kind of serendipitous thing. So we did this Great Victorian Rail Trail, which was lovely. Summit. I just, as soon as the bike hit the gravel and I heard the sound of the gravel, the tires on the gravel, I was like, ooh, something about that sound I really like. A loaded bike on gravel. I just kind of, And then I just got kind of obsessed with it, as I do with certain things, and started looking into it. I like gear, I like outdoor gear, and there's a lot of gear associated with bike packing. And I just started listening to interviews and podcasts with people who'd done it. But it still took me quite a few years to build up the courage, I guess, to start going further and doing more. I've done a few overnighters here and there up until partway through last year. And then I just knew in me that I wanted to do a lot more, push myself further, go further, experience more, see more. And then April moved to Victoria and started the Fledglings, and stuff actually started to happen for me as well. So, but it had been this kind of burning desire, to be honest, for quite a few years. But it's quite it can be an intimidating and scary thing to do, particularly around, I guess, the bike mechanic stuff. I didn't have much knowledge of that or navigation, so I was kind of, playing it relatively safe. Or actually, having said that, I was actually going out and doing rides that I was completely unprepared for, hoping for the best. And and I got through it, nothing went wrong. And it's only been once I've started doing this, more social riding with a lot of other women that the things have started going wrong. But I've had people around me to help me. So that's actually been quite amazing.
I wonder, was there an element of blissful ignorance and things not going wrong as well and not being prepared?
Yeah, I had no idea what I didn't know.
Things are great in that moment, actually. I think sometimes knowledge can be power, but sometimes knowledge can cause other anxious issues as well. Like once you know that what could happen, sometimes you think about that too much and focus on that side of things too.
Yeah, and I can be prone to overthinking for sure. So, yeah.
It's a hypothesis of mine that's one of the personality traits of people who are really attracted to this side of the sport. It's just a personal theory. I have no basis of what to put this on other than just interviewing guests and insights from different guests.
Yeah, I have quite a few theories on that.
Anxious self-talk seems to come up a fair bit, and I'm sticking my hand up firmly as a participant as well.
Yeah, well, riding is a really amazing tonic for it, or it can be. Yeah.
I used to say, this isn't just in doing tours or bikepacking or even in an ultra. I used to say that when I'm on my bike, I can do two things. I can either solve my problems or totally forget about them. And in whichever mood I'm in on the day,
Yeah.
depends how that can go as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of nodding heads here. Berenice, how did you adventure racing and triathlons and fall into bikepacking and gravel and stuff like that? It almost feels like it's a logical transition. Feels like I can understand the pathway there, but what nudged you into this sport?
I think for me, what happened is that I was just like still freshly arrived in Queensland when COVID hit, and it was uni break, and I didn't know what to do of my holidays because I had lots of plans to go hike the Larapinta Trail or something, and then suddenly I couldn't go out of Queensland anymore. And so what happened is that I was trying to find something fun to do without going too far, and I thought, oh, maybe I could just travel with my bike somewhere. And I ended up riding from Brisbane to Cairns.
Whoa.
Not like camping, but still like riding every day.
Can we just put some context into the distance of that journey? It's not a small distance.
This is classic Berenice. I'm starting to learn. Just like total dark horse. Throw something
Yeah,
out.
just casually.
Yeah. And you're just like, wait,
I
what
just
did
slipped
you
that
say?
in there pretty subtly. Oh, just this thing I did.
Yeah.
Berenice, you'll know because you did it, unless maybe you're not into the details of things, and that's totally fine too. But what was the distance of that trip, Brisbane to Cairns? I have a mental picture. I know where those places are on a map.
I never actually calculated how many Ks exactly I did in total, but because like I didn't just go straight from Brisbane to Cairns, I like was kind of
Took a long
exploring the
way.
coast and everything. So I think it was like maybe 1800 or something around that. I'm not 100%
Yeah,
sure.
1800 Ks. Oh, I just got into this thing and I rode to Brisbane to Cairns, weaving in and out the long way. It was only 1800 kilometres, which for my listeners who count in miles, over 1,000 miles. That's awesome. My God, what a trip that would have been. Did you love it?
Yeah, so it was, but it's not like, I mean, I was pretty chill. I was like riding during the day and then finding a place to sleep in a hostel or something on the way. I thought it was a very nice way to explore actually, because everything just becomes so much more, every single landscape, every single view just becomes so much more rewarding. Like you earn it. It's like looks even more beautiful because you rode to see it. And yeah, I think I found out that I actually enjoyed a lot spending long days on the saddle and riding all day. It was really fun.
Just what you've said there, the views and everything and the landscape seems so much more better because you've earned it.
Yeah.
Every now and then, Berenice, a guest of mine will say something and it like triggers like the mental light bulb that goes off. And maybe I've obviously thought this, but I haven't thought it out loud before. So true. Like a view earned is more special.
It creates a subject of conversation as well. Like people would come and start to have a chat with me just because they see me in some random service station on the road with my bike, and they would be like, what is this person doing here?
What sort of setup did you have for that trip? Were you like lightweight? Were you bikepacking bags? Were you with panniers? And what sort of hours were you riding?
I was like a student on a budget. So I just had like my aluminium bike that I had been riding for triathlon. And I had a couple of bags. So I bought one saddlebag, like big saddlebag, and stacked a lot of things on top of it. And I had a little bag in front of me where I could put my phone so that I could see where I was going.
Sort of really strips it back to basics. I love that about our sport actually, is that the more you do it, the more you realise the less stuff you need to do it. Sometimes it takes the experience of taking too much stuff to work that out. So that was you hooked then, that small trip, Brisbane to Cairns, that was you.
To be honest, I didn't do that many more trips after that. Like just like I did a few maybe long weekends, but I didn't have the chance to do that many since. But I did keep doing long days on the saddle.
Tam, like you use cycling for your recovery. I think I could call all of you, and you may shrug this off, but you all are athletes. Tam, you've been in that space for a bit now. Bikepacking, how did that form into it?
I think it came from seeing and starting cross. So then all of a sudden I picked up a secondhand cross bike that was way too big for me, that all of a sudden I had the opportunity to start going a little bit further, some different places. And I remember I started to see bikepacking, bike touring springing up around. I hadn't noticed it before I started to see it. And a friend said to me, hey, let's go on a little overnight trip. Where do you want to go? And we figured this out, and we were both total amateurs. And I genuinely didn't know how to put stuff on my bike. I had to walk into a bike shop and be like, I don't think I have a thing for racks, so how would I carry anything? And they gave me a saddlebag that I used on the Mallee Blast. That, that first little oversized saddlebag is still with me. Yeah. And we went and chose for our first ever attempt at this, the Old Beachy Rail Trail, which was not what we expected. We thought, rail trail, it'll be fine. It'll be flat. It'll be, champagne gravel or something like that. It was not. It was still really fun, but a lot more climbing than either of us expected. And then we hit just mud, and neither of us had any experience with mud. I do now, but and we found this section that just wasn't signed. So we ended up in a paddock with cows, with light fading and no reception, and trying to figure out how to get to the Old Beachy pub. And we got there thankfully before the light faded. And as tough as that experience was initially, and with the getting lost, I loved it. And so slowly, me and that friend did another one, which was great fun. Other friends started wanting to do some flash packing, and I went along. I think I always wanted to do it because, as I mentioned, I had that sort of childhood where camping was the holiday. And that became a little inaccessible for a lot of years in my life when I was sick, when I was on dialysis. And the opportunity to do it with friends and on a bike was really, I loved the idea of it. Those little flash packing trips were great. And as I saw more of the bikepacking events popping up, I thought, I'd love to do this. I really would love to do that one day. And it felt like that one day would be very far away. I think I was okay with that in some ways because, I had friends who were up for little flashbacking trips around rail trails and staying in the caravan parks in country towns and then walking to pubs. That was just joyous and that was good. But I did look at the events sometimes with a little bit of longing and think, I would love to be able to do that one day, but I'm not sure that I could. But one day. Then it's just lucky that I got to.
Wow, and so I guess segue into the Mallee Fledgling group creation. Rosie, you mentioned April's name there. For people who think they may have heard that name before, listeners of the show, April Drage, previous guest of the show, and actually that's how I came to understand that this was in existence. She mentioned it when we were chatting before pressing record about the excitement that she has for assisting a group of people into discovering the thrill of this side of the sport. So the Mallee Fledgling group was created. How did you all find out about it? I can see with all the stories that you've shared about what you've enjoyed getting into in this segment of the sport, I can see why you would join it. But how did you even find out that it was a thing? Berenice, how did you become a fledgling?
I think
It sounds like you do some sort of initiation.
Yes. Become a fledgling.
Sorry.
Surely it's an initiation, right? It's like a stitch-up ride, surely.
Yeah, we can't talk about it. Yeah.
Rule number 1 about fledgling is we don't talk about fledgling. No, but but in all seriousness, how was this something for you? How did you learn about it?
I think early October for me, I saw like a Facebook post about it, and I think I heard about the event, and then I saw that post from April that was saying that it was a perfect event for beginners or people who are like wanting to do their first event. That she was like starting to do a group of people to help them, I guess, learn the basis of bikepacking events. I thought at that stage, I was like trying to find a new objective for the end of the year, and I thought, that could be a fun thing to do.
Wow. Okay. What about you, Tam? How did you become a fledgling?
Kind of similarly. So in that hope that I had that maybe one day I could do something like this, I'd noticed the Mallee Blast because I grew up about half an hour outside of Torquay. So that's sort of my local. And I noticed that it had happened. I saw the group on just the normal Mallee Blast group on Facebook, and I just joined it. And I'd done that with a couple of bikepacking races, just thinking, maybe one day, and I'll just follow along and watch what happens. And being around Torquay when that was happening, I think I actually was in Torquay one day when someone finished. So thinking to myself, cool, that's the Mallee Blast. I remember seeing about that. So existing in that group on Facebook, I saw April's post. I remember, reading the same thing of it's a really good one for beginners. And for me, the important part there is she mentioned that there's a lot of supply stops because for me, water and stuff is a big worry. And so I was thinking about it and I sort of clocked it. And then it went to the back of my mind. And then I went to ride with my eventual party pace partner, Min. Shout out to my awesome partner, Min, one day. And
Hey, Min.
Yeah. When I arrived at her house, her and her partner had been hovering around the iPad, and she said, "Oh, we were just looking at this Mallee Blast thing, and we were thinking we might do it." And I said, "Oh, I saw that, and I think I'd like to do it too." and that's how it started.
Nothing like saying it out loud to someone, is it? Oh, commitment.
Yeah,
You said it
exactly.
out loud to someone
Yep.
else.
And that little comfort of having some people that I knew who were thinking about it and were probably going to do it made me go, okay, maybe this is the time. Maybe it's now.
And a teamie. What about you then, Rosie? Because what I understand from you is this is something you got really interested in, but maybe you were in the thought bubble mode of it for a while. Curious about trying it out, but were you nervous about trying it out, or like did you think you ever would get to that stage?
Yeah, I guess I did. Like, I'd been aware of the Mallee Blast, I think, like from the first year that it ran. So that was a couple of years ago. And I thought, that looks amazing. I'd love to do it. And then I think the next year I really wanted to do it, but like I'd just always been too busy, didn't have time, that sort of thing. And then midway through last year, the thing that I was involved in doing sort of stopped happening. And all of a sudden I had this time to commit a bit more to it. And then I saw, I'd been following all of these people on Instagram and Facebook who do these sorts of things. And that's what had really inspired me, like, seeing other women doing it and them talking through their experiences. I just, I had such an appetite for it. Then I saw April's Facebook post, but it took me quite a while still to actually, I saw it, read it, and then promptly shelved it. And then I sort of came back to it and messaged April and said, "Is it too late to join?" And she was like, "Absolutely not. Welcome aboard," kind of thing. And it was just the way, she had written in the description of what the Fledglings was about. Like, the hardest thing in doing these things is getting to the start line for a lot of people. And so she just sort of said, this group is about looking at what are the things that are getting in the way, what are the barriers that are stopping you, and we're going to talk it through and we'll work it out together. Just the way she sort of explained it, it seemed really genuine, not just here's a group that may or may not happen. There was just so much substance to it. Yeah, and then there started to be little workshops and events happening around it, and actually I started going to the Curve Thursday morning women's trail ride as well, which again is something I'd been wanting to do for ages, and then kind of just hadn't had the guts, and then finally went, and that's where I met heaps of the people who ended up doing the Mallee Blast as well. And it was just such a welcoming group of women, just so friendly and encouraging.
It's amazing when you sort of live in that echo chamber, just how much it sort of morphs into your thinking there as well. I have to say, I follow a few people now online where I feel like I share the same stuff that you all there are talking about as well. And there's a big part of me that has FOMO for this Curve Women's Ride. I know so much about it. I really would love to be. This feels like it's totally my jam because it just feels like such a beautiful, inclusive environment.
And it genuinely is. The first time I showed up, one of the people there invited me to the following weekend doing a sleep out where we were all trying out our bivvy bags in preparation for the Mallee Blast. And it was, just on the spot, come along. And it was like a magical weekend of us pretending we were sleeping in coffins in a children's playing ground. It was super weird but super fun.
You sold it to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, just so welcoming.
I can see so much importance as to why to do that with a group as well. Like sleeping in a bivvy. I know a few people who, when they first get a bivvy, the first thing they do is sleep in their backyard if they've got one, just to get used to it. Because full disclosure, I have not bivvied before. I've been in a tent or in a luxurious motel hotel room or something.
Yeah.
I almost feel like a sense of claustrophobia with the bivvy, but am I wrong to think that, or is that something when you first?
No, you're not wrong. There is a bit of, it depends on the bivvy. There are lots of different makes, varieties, brands. The potential for a sense of claustrophobia, definitely. But it was such a good idea to just, why don't we just all try out our bivvy bags on the same night? And if we freak out, we're there with 4 or 5 other people. But it was fine.
Hang on, can I just ask, Berenice, Tam, were either of you with Rosie on that weekend? Did you bivvy together then as well, or did you have a different bivvying first time experience?
No, I still haven't done it. I have been in one. So Min and I, we did a lot of preparation. We were trying to figure out if we were going to, we knew we would probably predominantly flash pack the Mallee Blast, but if we needed a tent just in case, so if we what we should take. We had a lot of discussions on what we should take. And so I have been in one in her house on her floor, and I look like a little caterpillar. Um, but no, like outdoors, no, I haven't done it yet. I wasn't on that night. It's half on my to-do list, but I'm a bit like you. I do sort of worry that I'd get a bit claustrophobic. So I like the idea of a tent or those variety of the bivvy, like a
Have a hoop.
yeah, a hoop, exactly. Like yeah, I lost the word, but yeah, the thing just the sort of your face to give your face a little bit of space.
Yeah, mine has one of
What
those.
sort do you have there, Rosie?
I've actually got like the super fancy kind. It's mountain laurel designs. Very pricey, but I got it as like a 40th birthday present from my mum. That was the one thing I
Your
wanted.
mum gives awesome presents.
Yeah, she did well. But it sat in my cupboard for like a year before I used it until this fledglings thing happened. But it's worth it. Like I feel really like it's totally waterproof and it doesn't feel too traumatic sleeping in it.
What about you, Berenice? Have you bivvied before? Or do you have a bivvy experience?
No, I don't have a bivvy, and I haven't bivvied before.
Do you think it's something that you would do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. I think I just don't own a bivvy at this stage, but yeah, why not?
It's definitely something I'm curious about. My first experience racing in one of these events, I was really fortunate. I've made such a great friend now and guest of the show, two-time guest of the show, Stevie Tisson. And when we were riding through the first night together on our first ultra, it was our first time for both of us to ride through a night. I wasn't bivvying and she was. And I just had this whole, oh my gosh, you're so brave moment. And then for the rest of my event, I was thinking about Stevie bivvying. And I sort of then went into the mindset of, if I was bivvying, where would I bivvy?
It becomes a preoccupation.
This is in northern France, and it's amazing. Before the event, I would never want this sort of thought, but I was thinking, there's a lot of really cool small little village cemeteries that would be great bivvy spots. Like small cemeteries, they generally got like an actual wall all the way around them. They've got a tap for water so you can refill your bottles.
Raise water at
It's my hot tip for cycle touring in France and probably most countries in Europe. Check out the cemeteries; they generally have a tap.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, and so I think I'm less anxious about bivvying knowing that Stevie did it, and I think she chose a few bus stops, and I think I could do it. My real concern, ladies, is I don't know how much sleep I'd actually get because I'm an anxious nuthead, and I'd be then having those stupid anxious fears.
Yeah.
Maybe though, Rosie, I just need to find a group of women to go bivvy with for a few nights.
Could be the way to go, yeah. But also, if you spend enough time with April, you'll start looking at accessible disabled toilets in a new way as well. Like she really encourages that location for bivvying, which I've taken on, strangely.
If they've got a hairdryer, that'd be extra awesome, wouldn't it? On like a cold night, you just have the hairdryer on to warm yourself up.
Yeah, you start rating them.
I was going to say, it's funny because even though we carried emergency bivvies with us just in case, but even though we didn't bivvy, it became like, I think hanging out with people, hanging out with the Fledglings group, and learning all we did, it became a bit of a thing that every now and then you just like, oh, that'd be a good spot for a bivvy. Like, even though we weren't doing it, you'd just be like, oh, that'd be a good one. That'd be a good one. Like, I remember day one in Lalbert, the rest stop there had like a cubby house.
Yeah.
There you go, right there, a bivvy spot. It was like you, it was in our brains all of a sudden to be like, well, where would we bivvy if we were bivvying?
Yeah, it's like learning through osmosis in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rosie,
yeah.
you've obviously bivvied a bit now. How do you feel about bivvying? Do you have any anxious thoughts about it now, or?
Not really. No, I mean, I think you do end up being a little bit more careful about where your site selection. But no, I feel kind of lucky that I don't feel particularly anxious about that. Yeah. It's just so much easier than packing up a tent. So, yeah, that just wins
Lighter
out.
as well.
Lighter, and you can be really inconspicuous in a bivvy. It's small, so you can really hide away.
Can I ask then, like, obviously, to me, that's a number one thing to have on like a fledgling sort of experience. If we're looking at breaking down the barriers of the things that might be putting people off from trying an event like this, bivvying or wild camping or would be top on the list, I would think. What were some of the other things that April sort of helped and others helped the group learn as a group? Berenice, if I remember correctly, one of your fears for the event was that your bike might break or it would be an equipment failure. And so then I think you unashamedly sort of said, but I've got all the tools to build a bike from scratch on this or something like that. Like, so were there mechanic? Was there bicycle skills training involved in the fledgling group as well?
Yeah, she did a few like bush mechanic workshops or like sessions, which were really helpful actually. Like not only about how to do it, but also what to pack. Like I guess otherwise you wouldn't think about what can happen or not. You wouldn't have the idea of thinking that this thing could break or not. Yeah, it was very helpful to do that.
Can I ask, can you tell me something that I might ignorantly not know to pack? Or what someone new to the sport might not think to bring that you should 100% bring for an event like this?
There's so many
There are.
things. I was kind of horrified when April handed out the worksheet or the notes at the first Bush Mechanics, because it was like back to back 4 pages of stuff we had to have, and I was just like, oh my god, like I maybe have one of these things. So there's quite a few.
Tool of choice, thing that you cannot travel without. Like, and I'm not talking about the spare tube and a puncture kit and a pump. That they're givens on this.
I think that, and I'm not entirely sure how essential this is, but there became a theme on the Mallee Blast of thing you needed to travel with. And one of the other fledglings started this by posting a picture of her bike ready to go with a brush attached, like a dishwashing brush. And all of a sudden, all of us went, that's such a good, like, I think some of us were already in Swan Hill. Went, that's such a good idea. We need to go get a brush, because we'd heard that there might be a lot of mud. And so all of a sudden, all of us went and got a brush from the hardware store or Kmart, and we just had brushes attached to our bags, like just a scrubbing brush.
Replaces that cliched enamel mug that's sitting on the outside of a saddlebag. It's just going to get filled with mud anyway. But
So I'm not sure how essential it was, but it became the equipment of the blast.
And we're going to get into this when we talk about the event. The mud definitely is a feature. I think April, in addition to the brush, also got like an ice scraper to help
Yes,
scrape the mud as well.
Yeah.
What a hack.
Yeah, I just used my hands.
Practical.
It was so bleak.
Min had saved like some plastic packing. You know how when you buy new tires, they come in sort of a really plasticky, not quite tape, but a ribbon. She'd saved some of that packing ribbon, and she was just using it to like shear off mud. Almost like how you'd cut clay. But yeah, so that was also another one.
There isn't anything you can do to prevent it building up, though, is there?
Not that I discovered.
Just not ride or walk through it, I guess.
Yeah.
Possible. Actually, did some of your cyclocross skills come into effect there, Tam? Like, did you shouldering the bike a lot?
Thankfully not, because I don't think I could have lifted my bike onto my shoulder. But absolutely, the 2 key ones, like the first bit of mud that we hit, which was sort of that peanut butter mud, and 30 Ks into day one, for some reason, I found that really manageable. Yeah, it gummed up. It was sort of shaping itself to my tire and the chainstays. But also, I knew that it would keep moving because I was used to riding in mud. And then the other one, of course, is if you have the option riding on a grassy shoulder. I'm used to riding on grass. It didn't worry me at all. So those 2 skills definitely came in handy.
Yeah, and actually, Berenice, you went in the other direction for this event, didn't you?
Yep.
So did you hit the mud earlier or later, or
A lot later.
what was the mud situation for you?
So I didn't have any mud at all for the first 300K. It was like hilly but not muddy, raining but not muddy yet. And then it was actually quite funny because the first 300K were like very hilly, and then the last 200K were very flat. And I had no idea about this mud thing. Like I had never heard it before. And so I was just 100% convinced that once I had done this like very hilly 300K, then it would just be like super fast and super flat, like just like an Ironman ride or something, cruising through. It was like just so naive to think that. And I'm just like laughing now, thinking back at it and being like, oh yeah, that was very, very naive. Yeah, once I hit the mud, I very remember like being riding and suddenly starting to see a few things like starting to stick to my wheel. And I was like, oh, that's funny. That's some little things like going everywhere. And it's like, oh yeah, that's funny. I'm going to take a photo. And then like suddenly like just my wheels stop spinning and I'm like, that's not funny actually. And yeah, that's how I met the mud.
Just the way you're recounting that story, I'm just overlaying the haze of ultra fatigue in that as well. Like you've travelled so far, you're so quickly, you're so tired. It's probably taking a little bit of time to sort of compute the situation at hand as well.
Yeah, it was in the middle of the night. And I remember like the first time I was like, oh, I need to find something to remove the mud. And I was the first time I didn't realize that it was going to happen straight away after. I just like, I had my transport, my key card with me, and I took it and started like scraping every little bit of mud on my back, and then just like ready to ride again. And once again, it was so naive to think that that was gonna be it and that I would be fine because like within like I hadn't even started pedaling again, that it was full of mud again, and yeah.
Oh my
So
god.
that's how my first time meeting the mud and realizing learning what it means.
So actually then going back to learnings, like, okay, bush mechanics, bivvying, what other sort of things are we learning about on this fledgling crash course?
Navigation as well. Yeah, how to use electronic devices, what we need to be, looking at, keeping in mind, like how to use a spot tracker, all of that stuff, which is, super overwhelming if you haven't used that stuff before.
Yeah.
Another thing to not have to be worried about and overwhelmed with on the start line, because you've got that experience, so you don't need to even think about it. You've already been through that scenario.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love the sound of this fledgling group. I hope that there's many more of these popping up in different pockets all around the world. Oh, I love this fledgling course. How many people were in the fledgling group?
Oh, it's what, 20? Like, it was pretty big in the end. I think we had 21 fledglings.
Yeah, it ended up being.
Or am I mixing up the number of women on the start line?
Well, actually, shout out to the women on the start line while we're talking about that, because I think more women were there than men.
Yeah, at the start of the southbound section, more women lining up than men, which is like almost unprecedented, I think. It was so
I think
cool.
most likely unprecedented in international standards, not just Australian.
Yeah.
Massive shout out to the organisers and April and others who helped enable, and all the fledglings for turning up. I have connected with a fledgling who sadly, through circumstance, couldn't make the event. With a healthy dose of FOMO as not being able to do that, but maybe not so much FOMO, seeing how things transpired. I feel like just their experience on the fledgling and listening to you, all three of you, recount that experience, I feel like it's something that, having such a positive experience, all those skills, they don't get wasted just because you didn't get to do this event. They're all transferable, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
Does the bones of that group still exist post-event?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of us feel like we've got unfinished business with the Mallee Blast because of how it played out. There are already plans for a redemption ride and to go back, and it's aptly named Back to the Blast.
Back to the Blast.
So there are plans to do that in April and to give it another go because it was such a it didn't go to plan for a lot of us.
Yeah, we all need to go back.
I mean, Berenice doesn't because she smashed it.
Berenice, you did smash it. Even if the mud smashed you for a little bit there, but you did extremely well on this ride.
I don't know. I was just riding. I didn't really know. Couldn't actually browse the map with my phone, so I didn't really know who was in front or behind or anything. I was just riding.
This is that understated Berenice tone, though, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think Rosie and I might need to dob her in.
Dob her in. Go for it. Come on now.
Yeah. I think Bella's already picked it up, though.
Hang on then. What about then? Okay, you've got no idea what's happening during the event. What about when you get to the finish, Berenice, and you find out? Like, what are you like then?
I think I found out when I was in Bendigo because I think I got a message from my parents or from my boyfriend or something that was telling me that I was in first position. But yeah, I think towards the end, I was really like looking forward to finish. It was a bit, it was quite funny because I could see the person who was just behind me who was actually the first rider on the 1000, and like he was actually really close. And every time I had to stop to, just remove some bunch of mud from my bike, I could see him getting closer and getting closer, and I was like, oh no, he's gonna catch up. And so at the end I had like this little adrenaline to like try to keep going and trying to go as fast as possible to stay in the front. But apart from that, yeah, once arriving, I was quite happy to be arrived.
Yeah, happy to have it over, but I hope also very proud. Would the word pride be something that you would attribute to your experience?
Yeah, I was proud. I guess I had to digest it first before being proud. I was still focused on arriving before having time to digest it and think back about it, and yeah.
And of everything that happens there as well, because I guess we should probably take a step back and talk about the Mallee Blast a little bit as well, and why it's a great event for people to sign up for if they're keen on this sport. I mentioned it in my introduction, there's a few distance options. You can do your 500 or 1,000. you can choose to start north to south or south to north. That's pretty cool. From what I understand, there's obviously hilly sections, but in the main, it's not overly hilly. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
I think also, Rosie, you bivvied, but it's also friendly to the idea of maybe doing it in a flash packing style and not having to bivvy. So there are places that you can stay. There's logical spots along the way. Would you say that was definitely the case, whether you'd going north to south or south to north?
Yeah, and lots of resupply points. So, yeah, super friendly for a beginner.
Absolutely.
Technically.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
You know what I just can't get over? Just when you do go back to the blast, oh my gosh, it's not allowed to rain.
No, yes.
It's not allowed
I
to
agree.
rain.
Yeah, we were looking out for the driest
Totally.
month.
But also, if it doesn't rain, it's going to be such a different experience.
It really is.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to ask, will Tam and Rosie, will you do it again if it's raining?
People have asked me this question. Possibly if I knew how much rain was going to hit and exactly when, I think I might have either left a day earlier or left a day later. Because that particular look, I will fully admit that particular moment in that thunderstorm on farm roads that were flooding around us with hail pelting our heads, that was a little bit scary. It didn't last long in the end, thankfully, but we were a bit worried at the time. So if I knew that was exactly what was going to happen again, I might wait a day or left a day early and try to miss that at the moment. But at the same time, if I had no choice, I still think the answer would be yes, which is terrifying to say aloud, but
I know. I'm sort of thinking, yeah, I would too. What does that say about me?
Hang on, Rosie. I need to go back there. So yes to you as well. You would totally sign up for it again. All this is telling me is you are all wearing rose-tinted glasses. Or you were so tired and far removed from the Instagram stories I was watching.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a very short memory, so it probably helps.
Is there an element of it's not so much type 2 and it's not really rose-tinted, but it's also an element of just an example now of what you know that you can endure and go through?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also just like that's what ultra endurance racing is. Like you turn up in whatever the weather is and try to deal with it.
I must ask, were any of you considering not starting, knowing what was coming? With the weather, when was it apparent that it was going to be Mother Nature was going to say, ha, 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 look what I'm serving you all up? You had some huge rain, flooded roads, big thunderstorms, hail. When did this appear in the forecast prior to the start?
I think I have a memory of us all in Swan Hill, and I'll just briefly say, like, back on the community thing, it was so nice, like, with all of us wandering around Swan Hill, you just felt like all your friends were there. I think I remember we were sitting at a cafe, we were, getting some food in, and we're all talking, like, watching the weather and being like, oh, is it going to hit? Is it not going to hit? And also having this optimism of like, no, it'll hit after we've gotten to wherever we're going. And then on the start line, it absolutely poured. 10 minutes before go time, we were running for shelter.
Yeah, torrential.
Yeah, and so it was definitely on our radar. And I remember, speaking of anxious thoughts, I remember asking sort of my cabin of fledglings, like, guys, if there's lightning and our bikes are titanium, what do we do? Like, is that something we need to worry about?
Can I say, I have this thought regardless of what the structure of the bike is. If it's steel, titanium, carbon fiber, aluminium, I don't care. Like, what am I meant to do in a thunderstorm with lightning? Very, very frightening me. I think we've all been in one of those. Part of me thinks, okay, if there's somewhere like solid to take shelter. I've been caught in them before where there haven't been trees. Sometimes I've seen trees and then thought, oh, that'd be nice from the rain cover, but maybe that's not smart because maybe the trees might fall down. Do I want to be out in the open? What's the answer? Does anyone know the answer?
Well, I could tell you what we did, which is we put our bikes about 10 meters away from us and we were in these little bushes and we made sure there were taller trees around so like we weren't going to be getting hit. So that's what we did.
Trying to hold on to some rubber or something as well.
No. We were lucky we found this little just like collection of bushes that, were tall enough to shelter us if we were sitting. That was about it. But they didn't, we kept our helmets on. Lucky we did because they didn't stop the hail.
It hurts so bad when hail pings on you like that too.
Yes.
It stings, right?
It does.
Yeah. In terms of that build up, like I'd been like the week before, I was like in a WhatsApp group chat with an extended group of people as well. And there was just so much talk of the weather on that group chat. And someone in the chat like worked for like Victorian weather climate monitoring or something. So we were getting like some really detailed reports of what like the thunderstorms might look like and stuff. And we actually just started to shut it down. We're just like, we're not talking about the weather. Like it's going to do what it's going to do. And I got to the point where I was just like, well, I'd heard so much about peanut butter mud and the Mallee mud. And I was just like, well, how bad can it be? Like, it can't be that. And I later found out just like, oh my God. The mud was just like nothing I'd ever experienced. It was hard. Yeah. And actually Sarah Hammond sent me a message maybe that day or a day later saying that mud breaks hearts and souls. And I was just like, yes, that's a really great way of describing it.
It keeps the bike industry economy going too for a few people too.
Definitely.
Like smashed, ripped off derailers. And I have friends who've gone through muddy sections on a bike and, years later say, every now and then I still find these little flecks of mud that have been ingrained that have popped out.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that resonates with any of you here. Yeah. It must have been quite a bike transformation post-event when you finally hose it down and wash it off.
Definitely.
Yeah. I don't think mine's fully recovered.
I mean, the bike is one thing. What about you all as well? Like, it's not like the mud only sticks to the bike. Like, it's going to fling on you. It's going to be on you. You're bivvying, Rosie, in this space.
Well, I mean, the first night I actually didn't bivvy. I didn't have a choice, like, because the first day was like,
hell.
It was just so not what I expected as how, I had like this really lofty, naive plan to ride something like 250k because like, Berenice, I was just like, well, it's all flat, hardly any climbing. That's like really achievable. And I think I rode 70k. Oh no, it can't be that much. No, it was more like maybe 100 or something. I can't remember. Anyway, I didn't even get, halfway in terms of where I was planning to be because the mud was such a shocker. Like my chain was coming off constantly and then my gear cable stopped working and then my gears got stuck in the hardest gear.
Did it actually snap?
It snapped the next day. The next day it snapped. So yeah, I had to get picked up on the first day and I was pretty devastated because the build up had been huge and I wanted to do this 1,000 kilometers. It was such a big deal to me. And then on day one I'm having to ring Terry the publican from the Witchy-proof pub to come and get me. And I was
That's going to be such a great clip. Sorry, Terry the publican from the Witch-proof pub. Come and get me.
Yeah, absolute legend of a guy. So he happened to be driving back to Swan Hill the next morning at exactly the time I needed to be going back. And he took me there and I got my chain had snapped by this point, completely snapped off. And he took me there and I got it fixed at the bike shop in Swan Hill before it closed at midday. And Terry drove me back and then I restarted the race. So it was like a total, I would have been stuffed without Terry.
Terry, you're a legend.
Terry is a legend. Such a nice guy.
Oh my gosh. You need to go back to the pub there and have a pub meal with him one day.
Yeah, definitely.
What would you have?
Yeah.
Sorry, food always comes up on the podcast and
yeah.
pub meals I feel need to be a highlight of this. Like what would you order?
Yeah, because like that night when I got in, I don't know, I guess I was in a pretty dark mood and I think I just ordered steamed veggies or something. It was really grim. I was like, why did I order this?
You could just see my face, everybody. Like, I think I nearly...
Yeah.
What?
It was a poor decision. I know. I don't know. I was just, nothing was really going well. So what would I order next time? Probably like fish and chips, or pizza, something.
Yeah.
Calorie loaded.
Schnitzy.
Yeah.
Chicken schnitzel.
Yeah.
Mashed potato.
Yeah.
What about you, Tam? What are you ordering at a pub?
Well, actually, this is one of my unfinished businesses with the Blast as well because I didn't get a pub meal. Like technically, we ordered food from the Witch-proof pub that day. We also got rescued thanks to Phil, the hotel owner.
Oh, thank you, Phil. Look at all these chats.
Witch-proof, seriously.
Yeah, Witch-proof. Yeah, we unofficially voted it greatest town in regional Victoria.
What is this? Witchy-proof?
Yeah.
Witchy-proof?
Witchy-proof. I mean, partly because of the name. It's quite absurd, but yeah.
This is not a town I've heard of.
Yeah.
I'm putting my hand up unashamedly. I'm going to finish this podcast and I'm going to get my Google Maps out and I'm going to look for it.
Yeah, witchy.
So yes, one of my unfinished business with the Blast is that I feel like I was robbed of my pub meal in my bikepacking event because I didn't get to go to the pub at Witch-proof and we just got a little pizza from there.
Pizza's still good.
Yep, still good. And then so St Arnaud, I think it was technically a pub we ended up eating in there, Rosie?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that place was.
Yeah, it was in a building that was a pub, but it felt like a cafe. It really looked like a cafe too. And then the next stop that we had,
And it smelt weird. I don't know if you noticed that, but it smelt really weird.
You weren't smelling each other, were you? Sorry.
well, it might have been. Who
Yeah,
knows?
true.
I don't want that to sound mean. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Hilarious.
Valid.
And then the next town we got to, the America pub just decided it happened to be closed just that day. Like there was a sign being like, "We will be closed on this day," and yeah, that's one of my pieces of unfinished business.
Devastating.
So hang on then. When you do back to the blast, what's your pub meal going to be? You've got so many months to think about this. You got to have it dialed in. What are you going for?
Schnitty and gravy. Definitely going for the schnitty and gravy, or if they don't have that,
Schnitty.
then
And for
papa.
those who are not from Australia, schnitty is chicken schnitzel, which, you know.
Yes.
And hang on.
God, that's
Before we
so
go down the rabbit
Australian.
warren of food, and fans of the podcast will know I'm a massive food lover, and each episode has to have some sort of food feature. But what gravy do you choose for your schnitzy?
What other gravy is there?
Yeah, it's cutting
I know,
edge.
but I'm now intrigued. Like, I'm not thinking anything sophisticated. I'm talking about just the brown stuff that they probably made from a powder. I am happy.
Oh, I'm here thinking like pepper, black peppercorn, or
or mushroom.
Now I'm happy with whatever just brown sludge they serve me that doesn't have to have any embellishments.
Berenice, what sort of jus would you have on your schnitzel?
I don't know. I'm not very used to the pub meals. I haven't visited that many pubs for lunch since I'm in Australia, so I'm not very used to the gravy and schnitzel talking.
This is a missed opportunity in the fledgling experience.
Yeah, we can fix that.
We need to ride in a pub.
Yeah, I
meal
was
for
more
Berenice.
into service stations.
Service station picnic. What sort of pavement picnic were you encountering then? What's your item to grab at a servo?
Can I just say lollies?
Oh, yes, definitely. Which, for those, again, who are not in Australia, are sweets.
Snakes.
Candy. There's always need for lollies. Funnily enough, whenever I've done long-distance events, I'm craving salt, not sweet. And actually, that threw me for times where I've been training. When I was training before that, peanut M&Ms were my little like luxury mood lifter item, and I'd have them mixed in a trail mix in a feed bag and think when I get a handful, and imagine when I have a peanut M&M, that's going to be amazing. And then during the event, it was like, oh, I don't want any of these. I didn't throw them out. That would be sacrilege. But I just bypassed them. But has anyone else had like what they trained on, what they yearned for during the actual event was totally flipped, and you're like, I don't want to see any of that?
Yeah.
You've got your hand up, Rosie. And Berenice, have you had that as well?
Yeah, sometimes it can happen, but I feel like it changes a lot even during the events. Like at the start of the event, you wouldn't want to eat something, and then 2 hours later, it sounds a lot more appetizing. Yeah, I feel like it varies a lot.
Yeah.
Because fueling for an event would be something else that can be quite tricky, and being able, what you eat now is fuel for tomorrow as well sometimes. Was that something that was covered off in your fledgling sort of build up to the Mallee Blast experience, nutrition?
Not so much in like a workshop or anything, but I guess on training rides, it's something we talked about and like obviously talked about and shared about a lot because we all kind of love food. But I think for me, that's still like one of the hardest aspects, like working out the nutrition. And I thought it was going to be something I excelled at because I love to eat. But man, eating on a bike continuously is actually really hard. Yeah.
That's blindsided me before, fellow food lover, because you get to a stage where you just physically don't want to eat.
Yeah. And that happened to me on the last day that I was riding, and I hit like a massive calorie deficit and I could not get out of it. It was brutal. I'd never been in it like that before. Yeah. Not fun.
No, you go into some really bad, hollow pits of despair when you're in that land.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like Hunger Flat Central. It's not a pretty place.
It's not a pretty place. I've never felt that before. I felt like this place of desolation, just to be super dramatic about it. It was full on.
Great description.
Probably all hunger flatted before, or bonked as the ultra term can be. Like we've all like run out of no energy before, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not a fun place. And the big thing for me is, especially when you know that's what's wrong, You somehow have to make yourself want to eat something. And then you get to a stage where even when you can eat all the things, it's not like it's an instantaneous energy uplift. You're in hunger flatland, desolate place for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been surprised at how difficult the nutrition side of things has been.
What do you think you'd change then, Rosie, for Back to the Blast from a nutrition perspective? Like, have you reflected back on that and think, like, what circumstances led up to it?
Yeah, I know one of the things I didn't nail, like I actually was hardly actually eating proper meals at all, which it was pointed out to me, like, because so many things went wrong on I encountered so many issues on the blast. I kept missing like pubs when they were open, that sort of thing. My timing was all off, and I knew from talking to people and like the training and stuff that you could like ring ahead and like get them to leave food out for you, etc. But I wasn't doing that. Like my thinking had sort of, just everything was sort of, I don't know, just not going to plan, I suppose. So yeah, I wasn't actually eating proper meals. I was just eating sort of snack food, and that's like, it's just not enough to sustain that kind of riding. So I would definitely at least be trying to get in a proper meal once a day. And then I don't know, there was something off with my like salts as well. Like, yeah, I had a few health sort of things going on. So I feel like I need to look at it a fair amount, actually.
Actually, Rosie, forgive me because maybe I'm thinking of someone else's story, but did you get afflicted with ultra puffy face as well? Like everything swelled?
That was me, yeah. It was not pretty. Yeah, my face and it stayed like that for days after I stopped as well.
It was like you were stung by a wasp or something.
Yeah, it looked like I'd been stung by many, many wasps. And I still don't really know what that was.
It's not uncommon.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it happens to everyone, but it does seem to pop up in people who are participating in these sort of extreme endurance activities.
Right, yeah.
But I don't know what the answers are. I don't know whether anyone here does. Actually, Berenice, Tam, did either of you get ultra puffy face?
No.
Well, it's not just your face, your whole body, actually.
Mine would have been a little bit different managing my medication.
Yeah.
This event was interesting, and I'd communicated a lot with my doctors because we thought it was going to be quite hot. They'd taken me off one of my medications that might have dehydrated me, but because it wasn't as hot as we thought, a couple of days later I was just a bit puffy from just living with kidney disease, so I had to put it back in. And that's a little bit of a different situation.
Mind you, what an extra level of complexity to add into doing an ultra, having to figure out meds and a feeding strategy or fueling strategy, hydration and all that on top of it all as well. Because things happen that you don't know. I say it so often, I should just have it as an auto thing. I can press to say it for me. But when you do these things, you sign up for the crash course in problem solving that you didn't know you were signing up for, because it's all about problem solving. I think you've got to do the training miles, but to some degree it's a given that you've already got the physical ability to do it. But it's all these little problems like peanut butter mud, what on earth's going on, to, resupply points being closed, to all of a sudden your gear cable breaking on you. Like you're solving so many things, and then you throw in that extra level of I've been awake for hours and not slept yet. I've got to do this tomorrow. How did the build-up of fatigue start impacting on you? Like, Berenice, you obviously seemed to smash it, and you had a slightly different weather experience at different times. So you still had to go through the mud. But how did you find you were dealing with things when you were starting to get tired? Did you feel the effects of fatigue?
Yeah, I think like I always find that when I'm fatigued, emotions it's a lot harder to like rationalize things. And so like a very little thing will like create a huge emotion or like a huge anxiety, whereas it shouldn't. And I feel like when you are fatigued, it's like, you can get overwhelmed by your emotions. And so, yeah, a very little something could make you stress out a lot, or that's what I think.
It's that a roller coaster. You can be as happy as anything, and then 2 kilometers later you might be crying, something like that.
Yeah. I remember. So there was a person who was he was a dot watcher, and he was in Bendigo when we were riding through. And so when I rode through and I saw him. I actually didn't realize he was a dot watcher, and when he talked to me, I didn't really hear what he was saying, and I didn't stop. And afterwards, like I kind of like processed what he had said to me, and I was like, actually, that's why he was a dot watcher, and I realized it, but I was already like quite far away, and I felt really really bad about it. I felt awful. I was like, oh, he like went out of his way to come and cheer on us, and that's so nice, and I just like didn't reply to him at all, and that's so rude, and I was just feeling so bad, and like normally like you would be like, oh okay, I will say sorry to him afterwards or something, and you will like go on and just start thinking about something else. And me, I just like kept thinking again and again about it, being like, oh, it's horrible, should I just turn back and go see him? Or yeah,
It's that sitting with that inability sometimes to make a decision too. Like it's being stuck in like, what on earth do I do?
yep.
Tam, you must have had some situations like that as well. I understand you're doing this as a team of two. Sometimes that can help with the decision making. Sometimes it can go the other way as well. Sometimes it can mean that you're dealing with two sets of problems as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that day one in the mud was funny because our bikes almost took turns breaking down just that little bit. Mine was eating up so much more mud than Min's bike, but it was just grabbing the mud somehow so much more than hers. So we were stopping more than mine, but then hers through the chain, it just wouldn't go back on. So we spent an hour sort of we were out of water, so we were dipping like a cloth in a puddle, wringing it out and trying to clean up her chain. But I think the tough decisions for us, we ended up skirting one of the harder sections of the race on what was our day 3. And it was because of me, and I fully own that. I struggled up day 1, my back and shoulders, and my body was just, I'm not great at hiking. There's a reason I ride my bike. So I was suffering for all the hiker bike and the mud and the hours of just walking beside my bike and pushing it. And I got through day 2, but I was really worried, to be honest. I was like, I don't know if this is where I have to call it. I don't want it to be where I have to call it. And I was just trying to stretch and walk and see if I could get my body back together. And thankfully, the next morning I woke up okay, but still, like, there was sort of no way I was going to be able to do that official section because it was really going to get climby and remote. And it was like, if something on my body goes wrong, I don't want to be in the middle of nowhere and need like a full-on rescue. And yeah, again, thanks very much to my awesome partner, Min. She's fully on board with this, and we found a different way in, and we adapted, and we ended up finding this absolutely gorgeous gravel route from Snarden to Avoca that was maybe 500 meters of climbing, but it was for about 40 Ks. We were just on this one gravel road that just kept changing and flowing, and it was beautiful. And then we hit the headwinds, and that was a bit harder. But yeah, trying to figure out what I was going to do at that point in time was really hard because, as I said, I was talking to my doctors a lot about this, and I know that I have some harder limitations than others might. And my motto and what I swore to my doctors, my motto would be going into this was, don't do anything stupid. And it's so hard to know when you are pushing too badly or when you're pushing the right amount. And I was agonizing over that. I really was agonizing over it. Like, is this stupid? Am I at stupid? So that was really tough, but really happy with the calls that we ended up making, and we had a great time.
I think you have to back yourself in those situations that whatever decision you make is the right decision for you. Like, it's not like it's not like you're going to come to those decisions lightly. Do you reflect back on that now going, I could have done that differently? Like just listening to you recount that, Tam, I don't think that you could have. I think that you're making smart decisions in a fatigued state, in extreme, less than ideal conditions.
Yeah. So yeah, reflecting back, as I said, I'm actually quite happy with the decisions that we made that day because I'm really glad I got to a point where I didn't have to call it. I'm so happy about that. But there's also no way that it would have been stupid to do the official route. That body wouldn't have tolerated it. So yeah, I am glad I was able to think it through, not panic too much, and that we did find an alternative. And I'm also just really grateful that I had someone with me who was happy to adapt with me.
Yeah. And my gosh, when I hear you talk about that, I feel like that's one of the hardest things when you sign up to an event. There's that little thing in the back of your mind whenever you sign up for something is, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to get there? Because if the outcome's known before you sign up, you don't sign up. Like, you don't sign up knowing you're going to finish something. You sign up with the possibility of what could happen, with this curiosity of how can I push myself and what am I going to learn from doing that and what's it going to feel like. like having to deal with the thought of, do I need to call this? I feel that's one of the hardest things to have to wrestle with. Rosie, take me back there for you. What was it like being in your head?
Generally, it's pretty interesting. It was just so much more full on than I was expecting it to be. I thought it would be a lot more straightforward, but the weather had such an impact on day one. I wasn't expecting on day one, as I already said, to be making a call to get somebody to come and pick me up because my bike was unrideable, and then going into Swan Hill on day 2 to restart, getting Terry to drop me back. And at that point, I needed to decide whether I was going to go back and do the 30 kilometres that I missed from where Terry picked me up into Witcherproof. And that was an absolute I can't swear, but I want to.
Mind jam.
Yeah. Part of me was just like, I don't want this to be a masochistic experience. I don't want to punish myself by going back to do 30 kilometres of horrendous mud that's probably going to do the same thing to my bike. I have tendencies to be pretty hard on myself, so I was super aware that I didn't want to go down that route. But then on the other hand, I wouldn't be able to officially continue in the race. And I actually had a friend message me and say, go back and do it, because if you do it, you have no idea what's going to play out in the rest of the race. You might end up winning still. And I was like, that's absurd. That's never going to happen. But she was actually right. If I had gone back, I would have, won, because everyone else did pull out in the 1,000 southbound. That didn't really matter. I guess what mattered was having made that decision not to go back and do the 30 kilometres. I feel like I needed to go through that experience in terms of, if I want to go on and do more of this, like I know what that feeling is now to pull stumps. And I don't know if I'm going to explain this properly, but it seemed really crazy to me to go back. But having done the whole thing, I could have gone back, and it would have taken ages, and it would have been, pretty unpleasant. It would have been doable, but I feel like I needed to go through that in order to see, okay, this is what fully self-supported ultra endurance racing is about, like that relentless commitment to going forward. And it's like, I wasn't really prepared to do it this time round, and I get, and that's fine, but I got a taste of like, okay, that's what's required, and it's quite crazy. Yeah.
If you think of it though, Rosie, like your whole motivation for signing up was to push yourself and see what's it like to race one of these, because you've had the experience of doing some bikepacking trips. Like, if you were doing this as your vacation and Mother Nature mudded out the roads on you, you wouldn't have persisted. You wouldn't even think twice. Tam, you took a deviation. You wouldn't even think twice of that deviation.
It's a really different way of thinking and of being in something. And like I had so many little instances where things just, like my seat post kept dropping. It was just like totally driving me. Yeah, so there were just multiple times where I'm like, should I be actually doing this? But just wanting to go as far as I could until it was clear that going any further was like not on the cards this time.
When I was watching it all play out, I don't know how I would have gone on the start line. Maybe with the beautiful supportive group all there, there's probably that feeling where we're all in this together, and so maybe I would have started. But I don't think I would have endured for as long as you endured, Rosie. I think you really tried everything to keep going. I don't think you left anything out there.
I guess, I just really wanted to do it. I thought that I was going to get to ride 1,000 kilometers. I thought I was going to get to feel what that was like. And like I'd been picturing riding the last couple of hundred into Swan Hill, that sort of thing. And and it wasn't until that massive calorie deficit and then having to stop in Berlin because of that, like a 24 hours of torrential rain, I started to think, that this isn't actually going to happen. Yeah.
Does the Mallee Blast have a cutoff?
No, but it felt like I started to live on the Mallee Blast. I was just like, am I ever getting off this thing?
You're going to put real estate up?
Yeah. Honestly, it was like I was in an alternate reality by the end of it.
Time cutoff or not, there's your own time cutoff.
Yeah.
Not everyone can just perpetually keep going at something forever. Like there has to be a final point where you need to get back home or you've got a job to go to or whatever, right? Because I'm just equating it to my own experience. I signed up for my event oblivious to the fact that there was a time cutoff, oblivious to the fact that it started at 10 o'clock at night and that the first full day was like a public holiday, which meant no food and all this other stuff. And I remember prepping myself mentally thinking, well, I'm always going to finish it. Like, success for me is getting to the start line. I don't know whether that resonates to any of you three, but just to get to the start line was a massive success story in itself. But I always told myself, even if I'm going to miss the time cutoff, I'm going to keep going and get to the end. But I can tell you, like, in the moments when I had some stuff happen, which was mainly perpetual headwinds, rain, and really bad saddle sores, there were moments where I was like, screw this time cutoff, screw this to the end. I don't want this anymore. I think I remember a phone call I had with my husband or a message I sent him, and I said, my reward for getting through this is a pair of hiking boots so I never have to do this thing ever again. FYI, I haven't bought the hiking boots yet, and I am maybe semi-curious because I interview amazing people like you all that like, it normalizes our sport, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be hard to explain to people, that's for sure.
I think the other thing is, this is a great example where I've got three amazing people here, all collectively in the same event with three vastly different experiences.
Mm.
You all know what peanut butter mud is now, but it's all different for you. Like, Berenice, do you feel like you need to go back to the blast?
I don't think I would go again if it's muddy. Like, it destroyed my bike too much. It was not worth it. But I feel like I would be keen, especially to see what the southbound route looks like, because the northbound route and the southbound route are different. So it could be interesting to see what the other route is like. And it could be also interesting to try doing the 1000K. But I'm not committing to anything. I'm just...
Do you think that there's more than 50% of you, your internal voice, leaning to the 1000K?
I mean, it could also be fun to just try a different event altogether. There are just so many events that looks fun out there that it's hard to choose.
What about you, Tam? You did it as a team of two. Are you keen to try some of these solo?
Look, to be perfectly honest, not at this stage yet. I still have a lot of health insecurity. So for me, like, one of the things, we've been talking about making it accessible, and one of the things that made it accessible for me was the fact that I knew I was going to have someone with me. Having done it now and, like, sort of learned about the emergency beacons and communicators, that's given me a lot of confidence. And also, actually, the other thing that was lovely was when we were riding, the community was still around, like, because we'd occasionally go off route, we'd meet people again, like we met Rosie again, sometimes we met others, and it is nice to know that community is still around. But I think I need a couple more riding with people before I could do something like this entirely on my own. Like, maybe I could probably do an overnighter one on my own, but yeah, I needed that confidence there. Just if anything went badly wrong, to know that someone was with me. And yeah, that was a great thing for me to have that.
It's not necessarily a box you really even need to tick. Ultimately, we do whatever we do in these events because it resonates for us. So then what other events are you curious about, Tam?
Like, I've seen some of the local bikepacking races, like Falls Goals, or I'm going to mess up the pronunciation of this, but Carrawed Wonderland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think, like, they're very far out of reach for me at the moment because, again, sort of my safety net is I need to, like, water is crucial for me in my health, and carrying enough. Like, I can't safely filter because I'm immunocompromised and all that jazz. So that's a hard thing. But, I look at them, I think, again, maybe one day, or maybe just some of it, or yeah. I'll look at them. I agree.
Rosie, back to the blast aside, obviously there's unfinished business there, but obviously there's something with doing this style of thing that you, my gosh, like through all the things that happen, you still want to go back there. Do you still want to participate in? Do you want to do another race? Like, do you want to race it?
Yeah, I don't know if I totally know the answer to that yet. Yeah, I suspect I do, but I'm also open to not wanting to do more racing, which is good, I think. Yeah, it really takes a specific type of person, I think, to race. Racing is so different to touring. But like I have said for a while that I really want to do Race to the Rock, which is, a huge step up, and I'm not sure when that would happen. But that's been on my wish list, dreaming of that for a few years. Yeah, I would just love to do it. I do it as a way to sort of learn about myself, and I think I would just learn so much doing something like that. But I need to upskill my bike mechanics side of things before doing something like that.
Pull out that 4-page back-to-back.
Yeah. Well, I've
List.
actually got most of the tools now, so that's pretty amazing. And I know what they are. I just need to know how to use some of them still.
I always went into it oblivious in a way, thinking, I've got what I need and I've got YouTube, but not necessarily always somewhere where there is YouTube.
No.
Yeah.
Race to the Rock, you can't be guaranteed that you're going to have internet reception.
No. Yeah, it's pretty extreme.
What vastly different experiences each three of you had. And actually, I mean, we've spoken of April so much here. We should also say it was almost like she was in a different race.
Totally. Yeah, it was.
Like, she missed out on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
She just, there were storms that she didn't get that others got.
Yeah.
And she sort of just,
Yep.
Yeah, the benefits of riding fast and not stopping. Yeah.
Whereas April says she just doesn't sleep anyway, so why bother trying?
Yeah. She still got some mud, I think.
She did. But she embraced it with that April enthusiasm.
Yeah, it did seem like she was in a totally different race, so I agree.
Yep.
I did ask you all before we got together to send me through a single word of how you would sum up your Mallee Blast experiences. And the words I got back was, I got stuck. Stuck was a word. That was Berenice. That was you. Rosie, you chose enlightening. And Tam, you said, this is a hard question, but the word you came through was unexpected. You said maybe that will change. Actually, just quickly, Berenice, your word stuck, you chose it for two reasons. One, for the obvious, stuck in the mud, but the other was that you were stuck in this sport. Like, you love this sport.
Yeah, stuck in the thrill, in the spirit. Yeah, in the
It's almost
adventure.
like positive mindset spin on a sticky situation.
Yeah.
That's true.
I asked you all that because I feel you get such an insight into your experiences when you have to condense something down to just one word, and it's what comes out of there. I loved all of your words. I think they're beautiful there. And hearing about your experiences in this crazy few days of, like, I don't think you could predict this type of weather event to marry up with an event like this. I hope you do all go back to the blast. I hope you have a blast full of sunshine on it and dry roads,
Thank you.
because I think it's going to be an amazing landscape to ride through as well, from what I understand.
Yeah.
And what a sense of community you've all gained from it as well.
Yeah. So lucky. Yeah.
It was a really wonderful community to be part of.
Yeah.
I guess my shout out to then people who are thinking of getting into this. It seems like you guys discovered it through Facebook groups. Is there a hot tip for a beginner as we look to wrap up the show? Like, what would you say? It doesn't sound like any of you have any regrets for this. Your experience reflecting back for beginner says, do you think I should join the Fledglings or join this? What's your hot tip for it?
Yeah, I think it'd be an emphatic yes join the Fledglings.
Yeah.
The group was, so helpful, and it was just nice to know that you were learning with other people, and you had people that would be there with you on the start line, as nervous as you, but as excited as you. I'll think about the tip thing, so I'll pause and let other people talk.
I mean, from my experience, the only way you get to do this stuff is by learning through experience and having like making mistakes. They're not even mistakes, they're just things that happen. But I used to think like avoid doing like long rides in case something happened. But actually it's like when those things do happen and I learn how to address it, then, I'm free to go and do more. I guess allowing those things, letting yourself go and do it despite not knowing everything, and you'll figure it out.
You don't need to know the answers in advance.
Nah, because you're only really going to learn once you're actually having to do it in the moment. Like I, for me anyway, I don't really learn by reading about it. I need to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I mean, I chose the word unexpected because it encompassed so many things. Like there were the things like, the storms, the mud, the this, that, and the other thing, but there were the positive unexpecteds as well. Like I felt the moment my body sort of snapped into this is what we're doing. Okay, we're riding all day. I'm okay with that. That was a really unexpected little win. And then there were just the beautiful unexpected moments where you would see something and just sort of feel it really deeply, or find that community, or you'd be sitting, in a pub, not in a pub, in a strange cafe in a country town with some other people who are doing this crazy bike ride with you. And the world was there, but it had also sort of fallen by the way. So, you don't have to know everything. Go out and give it a go, and you will learn as you go.
I think I was gonna add, like, you like don't hesitate to plan a lot, but also like don't be afraid to not to stick to the plan.
I'd love to know whether there's anyone who's ever been able to stick to the plan that they set for themselves in an ultra.
Yeah. Seems unlikely, doesn't it?
It does, just the way these events pan out as well.
Yeah.
So shout out to my listeners. If you're keen on getting into the sport of ultra cycling as a beginner, if after listening to this that you end up signing up for something and giving it a go, definitely get in touch with me. Send me an email, podcast@seektravelride.com. I want to hear about your story and help support you along the way too. I think that would be amazing. And so I know we're going to have a lot of listeners hearing you recount these experiences and probably intrigued enough to see, do you go back to the Blast? Do you try out more ultra events and stuff like that? For those people, if they want to follow along with your future adventures, what's the best way of doing that? Berenice, how can people follow you?
I'm not a lot into social media yet. I think it's probably on Strava that I publish the most photos. Otherwise, maybe at some point I will start publishing on Instagram and other things.
Okay, so you're there on the Stravas. Okay, and what about you, Tam?
I'm probably mostly on Instagram. I go by kidneying around because I love puns.
Love it. Okay, and Rosie, if people want to check out your future adventures, how could they follow along?
Yeah, probably on Instagram as well. So I'm under Rosie Glow, but the O is a 0 just to complicate it.
No worries. And I will add a link to that in the show notes for you all as well. All right, I am definitely going to wrap this up now. So I've got 3 questions I ask to finish the show off, and I ask all of my guests the same 3 questions. The first one is, you need to pick a song to be the soundtrack to this Mallee Blast fledgling experience. You each get to pick one song, and I want to know what song you've got. You all then get to have that song added to the Seek Travel Ride playlist, which is on Spotify.
Ooh, who's going first?
You go, Tam.
Well, I did see this question, so I looked it up and had to think. And mine it's a song called Little Bird by the Ghost of Paul Revere. I didn't know the name of it for a long time. It's just a song a friend put on a playlist that we shared, and I loved it. And I had it on my Mallee when I was riding on the Mallee Blast. I just still remember the moment it came on, and it's really boppy, and there were beautiful hills, and I'd been a little bit hurting and head down, and it just forced me to look up and see where I was, and oh, hey, really pretty things going by. So that's my song.
Oh, I love it. I love everything about it. I love that it triggers such a memory of that moment of just awareness of your surroundings and stuff, and mindfulness. That's beautiful. Okay. What about you, Berenice?
That's a hard question. I'm not a lot into music, so I don't really have any song names on top of my mind. I did listen to the same playlist like 4 or 5 times during the event, but I'm not even able to say what I listened to.
Wow. Like, normally I don't let someone sit on the fence, but when you're so unaware, you may have to send me a message. I'm going to hold you to sending me a message of the song, and I'll add it to the playlist.
All right, I will have to have a look and
it can be a French song. It doesn't have to be English. It could be whatever language. Actually, we've got a few different languages on the podcast now. It's such an eclectic mix as well. I love it because when I know who picks what song, so I think of their adventures. But it's a pretty cool eclectic mix to see what gets people in their drive to ride their bikes. Okay, Rosie, you go ahead.
Yeah, mine would be All Night Long by Lionel Richie, because that was one of the songs I remember hearing it when I was doing some of the training rides and thinking, yes, this is going to be me when I'm on the Mallee and I'm going to be riding through the night and it's going to be so beautiful and calm and I'm just going to be so strong. Didn't exactly play out like that, but I'll always associate that song now with this ride, I think.
Okay, added to the playlist, and Berenice, you're gonna send me a song. Okay, final 2 questions. These ones should be easier ones. Tam, you go first here. You have the choice one day, you are going to have to ride your bike either up a constant hill climb or alternatively into a constant headwind. Which one are you going to choose?
Hands down the climb.
No hesitation whatsoever for me there.
Headwinds just break me. I'm not that good of a climber, but I'd much rather have the climb.
Okay. What about you, Berenice?
I love climbing, actually, so I think the climb. It will be fun.
Climbing is a pleasure. I love it. And Rosie, what about you? Is it
climb? 100%, no doubt. Headwinds are disgusting, and I quite like climbing too.
Well, I can actually say there's 4 climbers here. I would never choose a dirty headwind either.
Yeah, gross.
Final question to wrap things up. This one will will be an easy one to see where you will land on this. So another scenario, you're going to be riding your bike. It's actually only for 4 hours. So in the context of an ultra event, it's a short day of riding. But you have the choice of riding on your own for 4 hours or in the company of other people. Which one would you choose?
Ooh.
Okay, Rosie, you go first.
Yeah, previously I would have said on my own because I like solo stuff. But these days, I don't know, having met this rad bunch of fledglings, I would say in a group. Like, why wouldn't I? It is more fun.
That's a great reason.
Yeah.
What about you, Tam?
I think I'd be the same. I don't mind riding on my own. I quite enjoy it. But again, I agree there's something about having been around people. There's something about, especially when you're out there, even if you're not talking while you're riding, if you see something, you can share that experience. So I'd say with people.
Berenice, what about you? There's no right or wrong answers here. What would you choose?
Yeah, if it's a nice group of people, I will enjoy riding with a nice group of people more than Earl. Yeah.
You fledglings, you're all so aligned.
That's
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, can I just say it has been an absolute pleasure to speak with you all. Like Berenice, Tam, Rosie, I've really enjoyed just getting a slight insight more into your Mallee Blast, Mallee fledgling experience. If there was ever an opportunity to have 4 hours of riding with other people, I'd love for you three to be the other people I'd get to ride bikes with. That would be an absolute pleasure. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories and experiences here on Seek Travel Ride.
Thank you so much, Bella.
Thanks, Bella.
Very happy
So
to.
good. Yeah.
That was an absolute pleasure there to record with all three of the Mallee fledglings, Berenice, Tam, and Rosie, and to hear their experiences of taking on an ultra event as pure beginners. As you can see there, they were three very different experiences. Some of them are very shared. Mother Nature was certainly involved and I guess gave the whole feel and adventure with a capital A. But I hope you enjoyed listening to that and understanding more about how creating a more inclusive community can actually get more people from maybe just thinking curiously about something to putting themselves on the start line and checking out how things could go for them as well. Now, if you're enjoying listening to the show, I definitely invite you to join our Facebook community. We've got a group there. Just check Seek Travel Ride. I've included a link to it in the show notes. The community is growing week on week, and the great thing is some of our guests hang out in there as well. So it's an opportunity for you to join a community with them and actually talk about some of the stuff, whether it's episodes or just future travels. I also invite you to follow the show on your podcast player so that you never miss an episode. Episodes are released every week, and I'm really excited about the guests that I've got lined up for this year. We've got some amazing, incredible, and inspirational guests to come, that is for sure. And with that, until the next episode, my name's Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening.